Hi, folks, and welcome to another episode of Careers and Coffee. Obviously, this week it's Apprenticeship Week, and today we're welcoming on Mark Ash. So, Mark is the Executive Director of Growth, Highways and Infrastructure for Suffolk County Council. We'll be talking to him about how he started off as an apprentice and where's that landed him now. So, let's bring on Mark to talk a little bit more about his career. Mark, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jordan. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too muddling free.
Yeah,
but look,
as we all are.
Number one question: have you got coffee?
I have got coffee.
This is what we like. Organised guests, nice mug as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been chatting behind the scenes. And I think there's so much overlap in terms of lots of things that are going on. I think I can definitely relate to a lot of what we're talking about. But why don't you kick off and tell us a little bit more about your role and what you do?
Yeah, great. It's interesting because if you ask my children, I mean, they're not children anymore. They're 21. What I do, I think they'd struggle to tell you exactly what it is that I do. So part of that may be that I don't take my work home, which is testament. But I think partly because the role is so varied. When you look at some of the services that I have, it can seem a little bit like an eclectic mix, but actually there's lots of complementary activities. So if we just use the job title, so it's Growth, Highways and Infrastructure, we abbreviate that to GHI because that's quite a mouthful for anybody to say. That the growth side of it is looking at the strategic growth opportunities across Suffolk. And equally, we have very close working relationships with colleagues in Essex and Norfolk as well. So we're looking for the regional opportunities. So I've got a team that is looking at inward investment activities, for example. That is, how do we attract new employers, new businesses into the region to get that investment, to get the jobs, create those opportunities. And apprenticeships is a big feature of our thinking when it comes to that. Also, we're looking at where we might need major pieces of infrastructure to accommodate businesses relocating, or if you look at the borough and district local plans where the housing developments are going to be. And so the teams will be working across my directorate in GHI to say, well, what is it we need? How do we deliver these big pieces of infrastructure? And the biggest piece of infrastructure that we're currently working on, you may or may not be familiar with, is the Goldwing Crossing in Lowestoft. So that would have been my team that led on that, did all the design work, the procurement work, and of course we're now overseeing the start of construction as well. So that is a key piece of infrastructure. And to keep it relevant to this conversation, we're always looking for the social value added activities, and of course jobs and apprenticeships is a big part of that. And we're particularly interested about how many of those jobs and opportunities can be created within that region of where the major infrastructure build is going ahead. So our contractor Farrens have a contractual obligation to deliver a number of job opportunities and apprenticeships within a certain radius of that infrastructure. So you can see how the economic and major infrastructure projects actually go hand in hand. Another part of my role is in highways. So anything to do with the road network. So anything such as street lighting, potholes, flooding, those types of issues, which are hot topics, is something that my directorate would be managing. And then we have the really important environment agenda. So my directorate would be looking at environmental strategy, so how we meet the challenges of the climate emergency going forward, how we deliver net zero in terms of carbon going forward, as well as the impact on flooding. And we've got some really exciting programs of work coming forward in relation to those. I've got the planning team that sits beneath me, so minerals and waste planning sits in my directorate as well. I've got a waste team, so when we manage the recycling centres and waste disposal activities, that comes within my directorate. Also, archaeology as well is within my service, as well as the records offices. So you might be familiar with the brand new building in Ipswich called the Hold. That's something that my directorate led on, and so we manage all the records offices in Bury and Ipswich and Lowestoft. Also, I've got the passenger transport unit, so responsibility for getting children to and from school where they're entitled, as well as steering the commercial operators, and we do some subsidies towards ensuring that we have commercial operations there. So I'm sure I've missed some out, and my colleagues won't thank me for missing them out. But you can see it's broad and varied what we do. So even down to school crossing patrols and road safety schemes comes under my directorate. So that's not really my role. That just is the activities that we do. My role is really to ensure that I've got the right resource in place to ensure that we deliver against the county council's objectives and priorities, and to provide that support and direction to my really capable team. That's really what my role is about. It's there to bridge the gap between the political ambitions and actually what is delivered on the ground. So quite varied actually, and a really interesting and exciting role.
That's a fantastic summary. I mean, just listening to that, I don't know when you have time to put the kettle on.
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, for that, Mark, I mean, I was going to ask this later, but organisation is therefore a huge part of your role. Do you sort of break down the day and think, right, okay, I'm going to tackle growth to, I don't know, 8 till 11, and then I'll go on to highways. How do you split your time to make sure that you're productive in all of those and that your team are getting what they need?
Yeah, the first thing is that you've got to make sure you've got the right team around you to give you that confidence that you don't need to be what we call in the weeds on certain issues. So when you're operating at a senior corporate level, you have to know when to get involved and when not to get involved, because you couldn't possibly keep an eye on everything that's going on a day-to-day basis. And so it's really important for me that I identify the right people and that I give those people the right resource and autonomy really to get on with their role, and set really clear parameters in terms of when I need to know things, and ensure that they know that I'm there to support them and guide them through. So I don't really have a disciplined structure that says, Monday I'm going to do highways, Tuesday I'm going to do passenger transport. It's really, for me, it's about making sure that I concentrate on the role and the job that only I can do. So what I'm employed to do. If I'm beginning to do the job that somebody else could do, then I'm operating at the wrong level. So whilst it seems like it's a major role, actually it's being very clear in your own mind when and when you shouldn't, more importantly, get involved in some of these matters. The only time that I really got disciplined in having that kind of passenger transport on a Wednesday or highways on a Thursday was pre-lockdown, when I wanted to make sure that I was visible to my team, and I would go and work in different depots, different office buildings, and so people knew when they could expect me to turn up. And so if they needed 5-10 minutes of my time, kind of an open door policy, they knew that I was going to be in that building at that time. So, but other than that, I think it's just impossible to have that rigidity at this level.
No, that's good. And I thought you were brave bringing up potholes on a live broadcast as well.
Well, you can't stick your head in the sand on these things. Otherwise, it just becomes the elephant in the room. I'm happy to speak about anything: floods, potholes. all legitimate conversations to have.
Let's tackle the question we just got below. So, as a young person, did you ever imagine yourself in a job role like this?
No, never, and I never planned it either. When I was at school, when I was much younger, I wasn't really clear what it was that I wanted to do. Even at the age of 15, I still at that point wasn't sure that I wanted to do. I think my ambition at that point was really to join the Royal Air Force when I was 15, and I knew that I didn't just want to join as a normal airman, that I wanted to learn something, that I wanted a skill, and so I did actually apply to join the Royal Air Force to become an apprentice technician. But it unfortunately just coincided with the exact same time as government were making cuts, and they stopped a lot of those training programs. So this was back in 1985, 1986, when I was leaving school, and so I didn't get that opportunity to do that. So it seemed like I just needed to get a job, because even getting a job at that time was quite difficult back in '86, and so the opportunity of an apprenticeship came up, and I went for it. And I think as my career has gone forward, it's become more and more clear to me actually what it is I like doing, and what I want to do and what I can be best at. So no, I never anticipated that I would be working for local government, let alone be working in local government at this senior level. So my career was predominantly private sector before that.
No, that's fantastic. And yeah, we talked about apprenticeships there. I mean, let's carry on with that theme. At what point did you sort of really realize actually this is going to be the right pathway for me? And also, on another sort of side note, do you still think there's a bit of a stigma around apprenticeships, or do you think that's starting to fade now?
So taking the first question about when I realised the importance of an apprenticeship, I think when I was at school, I mean, I was always really good at school. I was probably top of my class in most of the subjects. But to be perfectly honest, I was getting fed up with it. I needed a change. But I still saw the value in education even at that age. I always wanted to learn new things and do different things, and there was always this creative side about me. And when I was going for my careers advice when I was at school, which actually wasn't that great, if I'm honest, the advice was very very blinkered, and I was being directed towards the banking industry when I was at school because of my progress on maths and command of English and those types of things. But I just didn't want it, Jordan. I just the thought of working in an office, which is an irony at that time, given that apart from lockdown, I now work almost entirely in an office. It never appealed to me. So I always wanted to go out and do something practical. I knew that, and so, not really knowing too much about apprenticeships, I did think that it was a really good balance, because the first year of my apprenticeship, I was at college full time with other apprentices, and there was apprentices there from Network Rail, British Gas, and we had a really great time. So I was getting paid, not a great deal of money, but that wasn't the important point. But I was working with machinery, I was learning to weld, I was doing fabrication, and it was great. It was like, school on steroids, and I loved that, and I like the choice. But when it really struck me about the importance of an apprenticeship was when I'd completed that first year and went back to my workplace. I spent 4 days at work and then day release going back to college for the next 3 years. So it was a 4-year apprenticeship. I was working with people that were just so skillful, that were just so intelligent. So you had the men, and it was all men in the workshop that had been doing their trade for so many years. And what really surprised me was, because I didn't really relate to them, if I was honest. A 17-year-old kid, and you had men in the workshop. I don't know how old they was, but between the age of 40 and 65, let's say. I couldn't really relate to them, and I couldn't really work out why they was taking time out of their own days to teach me things. It just seemed weird, but they was, and it's only years after reflecting on that, just because I've now got to that stage where I like to help people and I want to see people develop, that actually I can now begin to relate to what it was that they was trying to do. They was trying to pass on this knowledge. But it was as that apprenticeship developed, and I moved around different departments. I was really fortunate because it was a manufacturing apprenticeship that I had, and we'd make big machinery. I'd spent time in the design office, in the research office, on the shop floor, actually building things. So I got spread around, but we had really good apprentice mentors there. So they employed 2 mentors, and there was 2 apprentices every single year. So actually I was in a cohort of about 10 apprentices, but very well managed, very well assessed, very well structured. And so I could really see the value at that point of an apprenticeship, a really good apprenticeship, not an apprenticeship for cheap labor. And I think that probably comes to your second question, really, about the stigma attached to apprenticeships. And I think I think that there's been a resurgence in apprenticeships. I don't think there's so much of a stigma now attached to them, because I think there's been much more focus by central government. I think there's been a realization about the value that can be attached to them. But I think perhaps there was a perception that they were cheap labor for a time being, and that there was almost this significant focus on a degree education, and the importance of going to university. And if you didn't go to university, somehow you were second class. Now, I really push back against that, Jordan, because I've already said that I left school at 16. I got my GCSEs, or O levels as they was at the time. Had no interest in going to sixth form, completely fed up with school. So I went the technical route, and look at where I am now. So but okay, so I have to admit that about 7 years ago, I put myself through an MBA, which took me 3 years to get, and that was really hard. Holding down a full-time job and doing a master's degree in business was challenging. So now I do have that qualification, but I had to put myself out to get it. But even then, I had such a significant career at a senior level. Arguably, you could say that it was unnecessary.
What do you think you got more out of, the apprenticeship or the MBA?
I think it's different purposes. I think the apprenticeship, I was really fortunate in that I suppose, fortunately, I'd landed in the right organization to do that apprenticeship in. I clearly knew nothing about that company before I joined it. I didn't know how good the apprenticeship was going to be. I didn't know that it was a world-leading manufacturing company that had been awarded Queen's Award for industry and export and all of these things. I had no idea that was the type of organization that I was joining. So I really struck lucky by joining them. I mean, some of the challenges that I come up against now, I still revert back to some of those people that I worked with. What would they do? Because I really did hold them in high regard for the time that they showed me, for the way that they showed me the importance of getting the basics right. So fundamental tools in your, I mean, screwdrivers and hammers, but in your knowledge space, pick up the basics, get the basics done really well, and you can learn to apply those to a number of certain situations. And I still do that now. So I think when it comes to things like problem solving and how I manage stressful occasions, I reflect back to my time during that apprenticeship, because there were some really good influential people that had a good influence on my life at an early age. And then I clearly made mistakes throughout my career, and I've learned from those. But what the MBA really did was it signaled to everybody else about just what I could achieve from a knowledge perspective. It made me competitive in the market, for sure, going up against people that did have degrees. And there is still that box when you apply for jobs that says degree educated or equivalent, whether we like it or not, and I don't like it, it's still there. So I think it makes me a bit more marketable at a senior level. But I think experience still does show through, but you have to get your foot in the door to demonstrate that experience. But also that there's things within the I suppose the work program that you do through doing an MBA that again lifts your knowledge up to that next level. Reinforces the basics. But the MBA for me, I'll be really honest, I would not have got through it was it not for the substantial experience that I'd got through my working career. It would have been too much to have done, say, 10 years previous to that, because I really did fall back on what's practical and what you can and can't do to match that up with a theory.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Mark. You talked about earlier, which I found really interesting, those blokes who were helping you out when you were on your apprenticeship and thinking, why are they taking time out of their day to help me? And that now you're doing that. And I know that through my work, one of the challenges is often you've got an employer, maybe they've just taken on an apprentice. You've got this young person who's, really enthusiastic to join, but sometimes they're lacking some of those soft skills, work readiness skills, whatever we want to call it. How can we support young people to be able to get those skills rather than an employer just thinking, no, I'm done with this? What's your advice there?
It's a great question. I suppose I think back, and I kind of alluded to it about how impressionable I was when I got that apprenticeship. I mean, had those men in the machine shop turned their back on me, I could have turned out a completely different person.
Yeah.
You know, so I have to be grateful and thankful for that. And I suppose when you get older and you get into a position of responsibility, and you get that opportunity to shape people's lives, when you reflect on just how, you know, sliding doors moments I could have had if that had turned out different, you understand the importance of behaving properly and responsibly towards those individuals. No, I think, you know, generations move on, and, you know, sometimes I struggle to relate to some of the things that the next generation comes to terms with. Sometimes I feel more like my dad every day, and you know, think things that he struggled with. I equally struggle with some technology and the speed of pace at which it moves. I get that, but some things don't change. So some things like, you know, being open-minded, being curious, having that willingness to learn, actually go quite a long way. So I think as well as the technical skills that you need, depending on your professional discipline, you know, whether that's welding or IT or whatever the profession is that people choose, I really wouldn't neglect those softer skills, that what I call the more transferable skills. Because you know, welding's great and that will get you so far, but actually learning how to communicate properly, learning how to listen properly, keeping your eyes open for opportunities, being open-minded about those opportunities, just showing and demonstrating that willingness to learn, I think will get the young people set on the right journey and provide them with great opportunities. Because like we say we don't know what jobs we're educating children to go into. Similarly, there's no way of knowing what their career path will take, and if they become blinkered and not open-minded, actually they could go into a dead end very quickly. But if they go through open-minded and curious, when that opportunity presents itself, they're ready for it and they're open for it. And I think through the behavior, they can demonstrate to other people looking more experienced, that can tell whether or not someone's got something about them. I think that will then elicit the right support from that person. And we're all busy, and none of us want to have our time wasted. So unless you're really up for a challenge and you see that challenge in front of you and think, yeah, I'm really going to shape this, I think that's quite rare. I think when you're presented with potential in front of you, and you've got that willingness to develop that potential, I think that's a start of a great coaching or mentoring relationship.
I think that's really interesting because, yeah, I think a lot of us have had support one way or another. It might just be that word after a minute, say, actually, that was really good, or don't do that. And any mistakes you've made previously, you don't want to see someone make the same mistake, especially if you've given them that opportunity. In the same way, you know, if you give somebody a recipe and then they complete disaster, you don't want to see that the next time. Yeah, you want to support folks. I think that's really, really interesting. Just bring it back to Suffolk County Council. You know, if from a young person, you know, what sort of apprenticeships are on offer at Suffolk County Council?
There's quite a few actually that are available. I mean, what I would advise people to do is to go onto the Suffolk County Council website. We've got its own apprenticeships page. And we've got an apprenticeship strategy on there. So there's loads of advice on there. We also post apprenticeships on Suffolk Jobs Direct. And of course, there's also the Find an Apprenticeship service that government do. So our apprenticeships are changing all the time. So we'll have apprenticeships in social work. That there might be some apprenticeships in growth highways and infrastructure. So in the county council, it is something that we take really seriously as our role as an anchor institution to bring apprenticeships on board. So it's always changing. Sometimes we want an apprentice, and often what we find is that apprenticeship scheme doesn't exist. So that's a challenge for us. It might be that we want to move into a new area of innovation, and you know, so one of the things that we really want to make sure of is that there is a realistic chance of a job at the end of it. And so when we're doing our future strategy, future planning, we think, is this an opportunity to create apprenticeships? We have a process called establishment control forms. It's local government, right? We've got forms for everything, but on this one particular form, that there is a box that you need to tick that says, is this suitable for an apprentice? So even if somebody leaves the job, there's always that consideration that before you recruit on a like-for-like basis, that the hiring manager has to consider whether or not that would be suitable for an apprentice. And we also consider mature apprenticeships as well. So we're not just talking about school leavers here. I think at the moment I've got 3 mature apprenticeships working for me that are doing their master's degree. So they're quite way into their careers already, but they're on an apprenticeship program. So my advice would keep an eye on that website and those links, and see what opportunities we've got, because they're changing quite frequently.
Fantastic. I think it's great you point out mature apprenticeships. Learning doesn't stop the second you leave school,
Never
college,
stop learning.
form, university. That's brilliant to hear. And we've also got a question on that. So, do you offer apprenticeships in your environmental department? I'm passionate about climate change and want to find work in this area.
Yeah, we may do. Yeah, partly. Maybe this is the culture that I set within my team. I mean, we could set up an apprenticeship scheme. I need to be mindful of the resource that we've got in order to ensure that is a really good apprenticeship and coach people through, and to say that there is a legitimate prospect of a job at the end of it. We are currently in my directorate looking at seeing if we could employ more apprenticeships in there, because we have, as I said, a climate emergency. We've got significant flood issues. We've got some great projects that would be fantastic for people to come and work on. I mean, genuinely brilliant learning opportunities right at the forefront of thinking. And so I think it would be remiss of us to not think about whether or not there are some really great learning opportunities there. I think it's fair to say that one of the challenges we've got at the moment, and it's not an excuse, is that a lot of my team just don't have the headspace to think about this at the moment. The way that we're responding, not just to COVID, but more recently with the extreme weather, with the flood events. We're still getting to grips with the climate emergency and the declaration of that at the county council. So these are the same people that really need to be given the time to think about what an apprenticeship might look like. But I mean, we're definitely it's on our agenda to look at it and see if there is something that we can create.
Excellent, thank you. And just sort of one for, I suppose, businesses really. So we had 6 out of 10 employers instantly stop all new apprenticeships the second coronavirus took hold back in last March, and we've seen 18% decrease compared to, in terms of starts, than where we were last year. Why is it important that we do have businesses considering apprenticeships moving forwards?
I think often it's underestimated just how much value an apprentice can bring to the organisation. I think in that vitality, that bringing a new perspective. I think just bringing that additional demographic into the organisation is phenomenal, and I think a lot of businesses just underestimate the impact of that. I think they see it as a burden sometimes, because they have to take time out, they have to give time off for study, and so I think there is this tendency to focus on the negatives. But my own apprenticeship, I did an apprenticeship for 4 years. My company sponsored me to go and get higher education, so I continued going with day release, going to college to get my higher national degree, diploma rather. So I did that because that was a forward-thinking organisation. They were world leaders, and they were world leaders for a reason. They saw the value in education and investment and getting that next generation in. So I think often that's missed. So I think it's really important that the impact and the benefit that apprentices can bring businesses is part of the marketing activity to get employers to respond to it. And if they don't know how to do it, maybe they're an SME. There's loads and loads of organizations out there that can coach them in how to do it. There's plenty of support now, more support now probably than there ever was before.
Definitely. Well, I know a lot of them go through apprenticeship, Suffolk based at SCC, so definitely loads of support for them. So one final question for you, Mark. If we're going to rewind the clocks, what advice would you give to 15-year-old Mark?
Just chill out a bit. Find that think things are not serious. Don't take things so personally. I was always wanted to be my best, whether I was playing football or whether it was education. I think actually that there's some real value in being yourself, being genuine, and I think that's something that hopefully comes out now. But certainly as you mature and get older, you can have your own opinions. So express them. People might not agree with them, but it's fine. We're all different. You don't have to conform. But I think perhaps the most important lesson that I would give my 15-year-old self advice is, because in hindsight it's a powerful thing, it is just absorb all that information that people are prepared to give you. Don't be suspicious. It's a great opportunity to learn things, and they're trying to teach you for genuine reasons because they want to do it. So don't dismiss it, because if you really get the basics right, if you really get those problem solving tools in your armory, you can apply them to so many situations. It will get you through so many sticky situations. So just absorb it, learn, enjoy it, and have a bit of fun.
Excellent advice, Mark. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thanks so much for joining us. So, folks, that was Mark Ash, Executive Director of Growth, Highways and Infrastructure at Suffolk County Council. So, Apprentice to Executive Director. I think there's a lot in there that we can all learn from. I've definitely learned a lot this afternoon. So, huge thank you. So that's the end of Careers and Coffee for this week. Be sure to tune in next week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12:30 to 1. Thanks.